most unknown organs, which means we don't know much about it as much as we know about other organs. Our brain is basically like our control center. For example, if I'm moving my hands right now, this all comes from my brain. A lot of your controlness is coming from your brain, which means that if you didn't have your brain, you wouldn't be able to move because your brain wouldn't be working. It's basically called like a dead brain. Our brain is basically made of nervous tissue just because it has nerve cells inside of it. Our nerve cells can help transport messages from our brain throughout our body and from our body to our brain. Let's move on to my first fact to learn more about brains. My first fact is about brain cells. As you know, I talked about how our brain is made of nervous tissues and there are nerve cells inside of it. Our nerve cells are also called neurons. A part of our neuron is the synapse, which are parts that can communicate with our nerve cells or neurons in order to create different actions we have. This is basically like a process. Some facts about neurons are they're units of the nervous system. They can transport messages throughout the whole body to express what you are doing or what you feel like. And also they're like branching extensions like tree roots throughout the body. Here is a picture of nerve cells, and as you can see, that bright yellow light is like the messages that are transporting throughout the body as the neurons. The neurons will transport all messages that need to be transported so we can actually move and walk and do every action we do every second. My next fact is about basic instincts. As you know, we have our outer part of the brain, which we know in usual pictures, it looks pink. But while the inside of our brain controls the way you feel inside of your body, this can include emotions. For example, in this diagram, when it lights up, the middle is the temporal lobe. The middle is the temporal lobe, which can control how you feel. These can be different emotions, including the ones below. For example, joy or surprise or angry. This all comes from your brain because if you didn't have your brain, you wouldn't have an emotion at all. Now let's talk about the thinking brain. On our brain, now we're talking about the outside. The outside of our brain holds the cerebral cortex, also shown in the blue. The cerebral cortex is the most cleverest part of our brain, and also it's the most biggest part of our brain. And this means the cerebral cortex is a very vital part to help with our body. This is because the cerebral cortex includes many of our processes, for example, being able to see or being able to talk like I am doing right now. My two examples are speech and vision. Right here in the white box, you can see there is the speech area, which is it, and that controls what you are talking about or how you are talking. If you talk in different languages, it can control if you have to roll your tongue or not. Your brain controls everything of your speech, so that is the white area. It's also called the Wernicke's area, the speech area. Now let's talk about the vision area. In my diagram, you can see the red box equals the vision area. This is how you can see, and sometimes you move your eyes around. This all comes from your brain. So the outer part of the brain mainly focuses on many mental processes throughout your whole body. Now let's talk about your sense of touch. Right here, I made a diagram or a picture. It might look weird because the hands are really big and also the head's really big. This picture expresses your sense of touch. One of our main senses of touch is our hands. This is because we touch everything. We even touch the air. We also touch different foods when we eat. That's why the tongue is sticking out, because we can touch things and express the way how we touch different foods when we eat. And then also our face in general just touches different areas. For example, our eyelashes can touch different things inside of the air or molecules. This is how the sense of touch works, and that's what the picture explains. Now let's talk about this diagram. In this diagram, the yellow part inside of the brain is the sensory areas. This is where you have your own senses, and that's where your senses come from, or like your touch. If you touch something, mainly what you touch and what you're thinking about is from your sense of touch. And that's the yellow part. My next fact is called how memory works. The brain stores memories as networks of connections, but it goes in a particular pattern. Not all memories have the same pattern. This all depends on the neurons. When you recall a memory or a fact, the neurons will fire the same pattern in order to recall it so you can make it stronger. Right here I have three steps to show you about the neuron process. As you can see in the neon yellow, that's the neuron. For the neuron process, the first one is creating the pattern. When you create the pattern, it's just a normal pattern that's short, and that makes the memory. But when you fire the memory again, it repeats the pattern, and then it adds other neurons to create the same pattern again and again in order to make that memory stronger. The last step is the strongest, which adds more neurons in order to keep it like stuck in your head. So if you ever had something stuck in your head, that is because the neurons inside of your body, those patterns are really strong. For example, if you go to Cedar Point, you have a memory stuck in your head from that fun place because your neurons keep firing the same pattern over and over again when you remember it. And lastly, let's talk about some fun facts. In this topic, you heard me talk a lot about neurons. The number of neurons inside of your brain is about 100 billion. And since our brain is mostly made of nervous tissue, there's also many other substances inside, including water. 78% of your brain is water, while 11% of it is also fat. And now let's talk about energy. When you eat a lot of food, you gain energy, but then you have to lose that energy. Guess what? 20% of your energy is used by your own brain just because it works so hard every day. And lastly, you can tell your parents this, but the average weight of their adult brain is 3 pounds. So if they weigh themselves on the scale, 3 of their pounds is by their brain. In conclusion, I think our brain power is so intense, and it's also very vital because we can use our brain every single day to think about different processes. So every time we move or make an action, that action is always from our brain. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a lot about this topic.